there, cat people. Dan the Catman here, and we have a big group today. I'm joined by Samantha Knox, who is our opinion columnist. We're also joined by Stephen Quant, our resident cat behavior specialist. And welcome to episode 59 of the Shelter Cats podcast. This is our new tagline. Ready? The podcast created by Shelter Cats. What do you think? You like that tagline? I like it.
I
You
like
don't
it.
you don't have to like it. That's fine. It's not written in stone. Uh, Joining us today is Jeff Carstens of Floral Park. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Dan. How are you?
So, Jeff I'm calling you a feline advocate because you're working on behalf of homeless and street cats and stray cats and feral cats. And we're going to specifically talk about a law that was recently passed in Floral Park and your efforts to work with the town about that specific law. But to back up for a moment, can you give us a little background on, I guess, you and how you became, I don't know if you want to call yourself a feline advocate, but how you got involved with cat rescue?
Well, that's a great question. I live in the west end of Floral Park Village, which is a sort of a secluded area within the village itself, secluded by the fact that it's kind of corralled by the Belmont Racetrack, the Floral Park Belrose Elementary School, and the Long Island Railroad main line. And my wife and I have been cat owners for a number of years. My wife has owned cats for many years beyond that. So by definition, we're cat advocates. And most of the cats that we now are fortunate to be in the possession of have been rescued literally off our back patio that have shown up in one form or the other. And we also care for cats that come by every so often if they're in need of a meal. And we cared for a cat for several years that was an independent tortoiseshell cat. If you know torties, they tend to be independent by definition. And she was determined to be an outside cat, and so we created a little makeshift shelter for her, heated for the winter and monitored by, I think, 3 or 4 different cameras. So she was better monitored than a bank vault. And then unfortunately, about 2 months ago, she was attacked by a raccoon, believe it or not, in the middle of the daylight.
Oh my God.
And I was fortunate to be able to break that up. And she ended up with a compound fracture. Long story short, she was not bit, and she got some great vet care over about 6 or 7 weeks, and she's now sequestered in one of our bedrooms, living the life of a queen. And doing very
Aw.
nicely.
Lucky.
Yeah, she's probably about 12 or 13 years old, so she's on the senior side, and she gets regular medication and subcutaneous fluids, and she's doing great. And we named her years ago Mocha, and she looks like a cup of cappuccino. And through that effort, we have my wife and I retired a few years ago, and we decided to kind of devote some of our energies and efforts to animal rescue, particularly cats, which there's a lot of opportunity to do that, but not large organizations, more small mom and pop shops that were run by people that had a passion for the cat rescue and animal rescue business. And it wasn't limited to cats, but that was our primary focus. And through that effort, we've managed to connect with a number of area rescue people and rescue groups. And when Mocha was attacked by the raccoon, we needed to figure out how to trap her. She took 3 days to come back to her encampment in on our patio. When she did, our rescue friends came to our rescue and to Mocha's rescue, and managed to catch her with a net, believe it or not, even though she was limping. And arranged for us to see a specialty vet that was open 24 hours over in Huntington. So we drove her to Huntington from Floral Park, came back in a snowstorm, but managed to spend 3 hours there to get her her initial care. And so, and our rescue advocate, who is an expert at, the rescue groups are all a little bit different. They all have their own unique style and unique ways, and frankly, none of them have a heck of a lot of availability, but they all seem to have a different kind of perspective. Kind of like every bank is different, every hospital is different, every company in the same industry tends to be a little different, and the rescue folks are different as well, and oftentimes they don't subscribe to the same strategy that others do. We were very fortunate to find Claudia from Cats Under the Stars, and she's a retired attorney. She lives in Roslyn, and we adopted one of our cats from her a few years ago, and we've stayed close to her. And so she came over with another friend of hers who also lives in Floral Park, and helped us with Mocha initially, has come over um, almost every day since that happened 2 months ago. So that's it's
Wow.
helped us understand the cat rescue business, and since that time we've now encountered 3 new visitors on our back patio, and she's helping us corral those kitties up next week and get them. We think one might be pregnant, so but figuring out an indoor solution for them,
Wow,
and
that's awesome.
so yeah, and we were just to circle back to the law issue. We coming back from a dinner in New Jersey at the end of last November, and our neighbor who babysits our cats when we're away um, sent us a headline to a story about Floral Park outlawing the feeding of feral cats outside. And definition of feral cats is, feral cat can be a house cat with good care and good socialization. Not all the time, but a good number of times. And we have numerous examples. You may see one on my shoulder at some point to that effect. And I thought it was a joke at first, to be frank. And as it came to be discovered, that it was indeed the law. It was a law passed in November in our village, and it didn't make any sense to me. I was, frankly, my wife and I were pretty angry and perplexed as to what gave rise to that. And so we put a simple post up on one of our Floral Park Village Facebook pages, and it met with a pretty rousing outrage, I guess is the best way to describe it. People are really upset to hear about the fact that this law was even passed. Folks didn't really know it. And the village did all the right things. They notified people based upon the legal requirements to do that, but they didn't go out of their way to tell people what they were doing. And so I put this post up, and it got a whole bunch of notice and commentary. And the Village of Floral Park's board meets the first and third Tuesday of every month. This happened to be coming into the first Tuesday that weekend. And so someone said, "Are you going to go to the board meeting?" I said, "Well, I guess." I wasn't planning on it, but I guess now we're going. And so my wife and I and our friend Claudia from Cats Under the Stars attended, along with some other neighbors as well. And we many of us got up to speak and conveyed our objection to this law and how it needed to be repealed and certainly changed, and trying to figure out why it came about. And as many of us were talking, at least some of us were, the mayor, and they're all good people. They live in the village, and they're doing this job. I'm not sure why, but out of the goodness of their hearts, I guess. And and he said, we're not really going to enforce this law. I said, guys, you can't have a law in the books that you're not going to actually enforce. That doesn't make any, then why bother having this on the
Yeah,
books?
exactly. Why bother even passing it?
Why doing it? So long story short, that was a Tuesday. By the weekend, I didn't hear from anybody at the village board level. So I sent off an email to the mayor and the 4 trustees, and I said, this is, we got to figure out a way to change this. And long story short, and the early part of next week, I got a call from the mayor on my cell phone, and we ultimately had a nice conversation. He said his family are cat owners, and he understood the concept and the issue, and one of the trustees is a cat owner and has fed cats outside as well in her past, they're going to put together a group and they're going to reach out and contact me. Ultimately, that ended up happening after the holidays and early January. My wife, Claudia Kessler, and I met with two of the trustees of Village Hall, and we talked about a framework that would make sense. In between it, I think the folks from one of the civic associations asked me to speak at one of their meetings, and one of the other trustees was there. So I've talked to the mayor and 3 out of the 4 trustees. I think there's one person on the board that I haven't had a conversation with about this so far. And so early part of this year, we had a lot of dialogue, and they asked us to prepare a flow chart. If you see a cat, what do you look for, and what do you do, and who do you contact? And Claudia's organization was listed as one of those contacts, and along with a gentleman by the name of John DeBacker, who you all may have heard
Yep.
of.
I've worked with him. He's been on the show.
John's got about 80,000 followers on Facebook, he's I'm not quite sure what John's business is, but except trapping and rescuing cats.
That is his business. That's his 24/7 business, as far as I understand.
Yeah, and I think he's affiliated with an organization as well. Nonetheless, John's quite aggressive at being able to save cats, and I think one other outfit we listed as a potential contact if you happen to see a cat. So we gave all that information back to the village a while back, and nothing really happened. And then the village each trustee produces a report on certain categories. And the early meeting in March, one of the trustees had posted their report on just generic animal feeding outside and the care that needs to be taken when you do that. And I said, this is just trying to whitewash the whole issue. And it got me remotivated, to say the least, because I thought we were heading down a path where they were going to rescind this law or come up with some better guidance as to how to take care of outside cats. And my goal was, it may still be unachievable, but it was to get every homeless cat in Floral Park off the street, whether it be through adoption or whether it be through a sanctuary solution, whether it be folks taking cats inside that they find in their backyard. And that was the other component to this law. There was a limitation of 2 cats per household written into it's. In fact, it's still on the books as of today. And so we brought that to their attention, and the response that I received from the mayor was that was a mistake. Well, if you happen to look on the village website, the law that limitation of 2 cats per household is still on the books, as is the original law. So nothing has changed since they passed this addition to Section 10 of the Village Park Law last November. And so I got upset about that, and because I thought we were making positive progress. I have some folks, if you have read any of the Facebook commentary online, some people have lost patience months ago that this is still in existence. And when I spoke to the South Side Civic Association in early January, somebody asked one of the trustees, why don't you just repeal this law today and start all over again with something different? There was no commitment to do that, but that seemed to be an easy solution, at least in my book. But I could understand how maybe the village board and the village leadership may have been embarrassed because they did something, and they reacted to this based upon a hoarding situation that was taking place in the West End that had been going on for years, that started to encroach upon the neighbors of this particular house. And a lady that was older was gathering north of 30 cats in her house, and they were outdoor cats, and they were being fed outside. Food was being left on the ground, and bug infestations took place in neighboring homes, and it became a real problem. And the homeowner was completely cooperative with another family member to resolve that situation. So that was what our village leaders claimed was the motivation to pass a law against feeding feral cats everywhere in the village. And we brought it to their attention that that was not going to solve a hoarding situation, and was not going to stop people from feeding feral cats. At least it was evident to me, at least, that what they were trying to do was give themselves a little bit of legal clout without having to cross into a criminal violation, because hoarding
Okay.
is not, it's not infringement upon people's homes or neighbors. It's cruelty to the animals involved. And for that you need probable cause, and I'm sure you have to go get a warrant, and it could be a misdemeanor, or God forbid worse. And the village didn't want to do that, and there are laws on the books that would allow them to have done that, I believe. But that was not what they were interested in doing. And I get that. I said, but what you passed doesn't accomplish what you intended it to do. It doesn't stop a similar situation from occurring, because if that lady didn't let her cats outside, you never would have known. And it was only because she was feeding on her back porch or patio or whatever, and food was left out for a long time, that became a situation that was out of control. And the village leaders seem to have understood that, but at the end of the day, nothing changed. So when I saw the report in early March, I said, okay, I've had people suggest that we do petitions. I wasn't sure that was going to be effective, but I said, okay, let's start going down this route. And so we did that about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago. And today we have almost 1,300 signers on this petition, both within Floral Park and within the region and afar, to have this law repealed. And so on Saturday, Friday, I guess it was, I emailed and mailed a hard copy of that letter, along with the petition results, and various comments that were on the petition itself, to the mayor and the trustees, and to get them to respond to really the widespread demand that this law be repealed. And some folks, I've had to sort of hold people back a little bit, because they essentially want to storm Village Hall. They want to have protest and rabble rouse and attend meetings. And I said, well, let's see if we can get the attention of the leaders through this mechanism, and try to maintain a level of professionalism and courtesy. They are our neighbors, and we want to make sure that this takes place. But some have suggested that we take more militant actions, and I'm resistant to do that for obvious reasons. It's a
Right.
simple thing to fix, and that's what we want our elected leaders to do, and it's all for the benefit of the cats. And we all know the challenges outdoor cats face, and we would love to take them all in, but that's not always physically possible for many people. So if we can come up with a comprehensive fix on this, come up with a good TNR adopt sanctuary program. We've also offered to chip every house cat in Floral Park for free. And that's not been taken up either. They've not accepted that offer. It's obviously an important feature. If you have a house cat that gets out, we have one that likes to escape all the time. And it's very helpful and beneficial if that's the case. So, I think the village wants to do the right thing. They just either don't know how, or they can't get off the dime. And honestly, I've lost patience with that. There's no reason for this to continue on for 4 or 5 months. So that's kind of where we stand.
So just for context, believe it or not, we have international listeners. Floral Park is basically on the border of Nassau County, Long Island, and Queens in New York City, just for context. I looked this up. There's about 17,000 people in Floral Park. Is that correct?
Sounds
Is that
about right.
accurate?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
What is the homeless cat situation? Are there a lot of homeless cats, or are there a lot of stray
Yeah.
cats?
I've been told by the mayor there are no known colonies within the village. Truthfully, I think it matters. It's a matter of how you defined colony, and I'm sure the cat experts would. If two are traveling together, that can blossom into a colony pretty quick if they're of opposite genders, and
And like each
uh,
other.
yeah,
Or
and
not.
but I think that they move around. I honestly I don't know what the exact population is, but there's enough. I mean, there's three that are coming in our backyard today, once or twice a day for food that we're gonna scoop up and get medically attended to. But it doesn't take more than a couple to start the math exponentially going higher. And cats are pretty prolific, and they'll reproduce with great vigor if afforded the opportunity. So our goal is to take it out, stop it from happening, and take them off the street. And most cats, I think, can be adopted at some point if we have the capacity to do that. And I want the village to help in a private public partnership to help make this happen. And I'm only a cat expert because I'm a cat owner and I've cared for them over the course of time. The rescue people are really the experts. They understand what to do. They are fearless as it relates to trapping. They know the medical world extremely well. Depending on a cat's condition, they'll tell you got to go here, you got to go there. They also have the opportunity to get medical care at a discount because of their non-for-profit status, and they have arrangements with certain vets. So vet care is expensive, as we all know, and pet insurance can be expensive just to carry. Never mind what little they ultimately reimburse you for. So it's if you have half a dozen cats, odds are you don't have pet insurance. And so every time you go to a vet, particularly post-pandemic, it's a pricey experience. So people need to understand if they see a cat, what to do with it, who to call, and in conjunction with a sanctioned rescue group, get this cat off the street and get it cared for medically, and have a solution for it after that, because it's a chain of events. You have to understand, it's not just feeding a cat, because being I think it's defined as a feeder breeder, it doesn't really help matters, because all you're doing is facilitating the proliferation of cats in the community. You got to have a next step in mind as to what you're going to do and how you're going to get that cat trapped and cared for and off the street, and then
Dan,
where it's going to go after that.
Dan, could I just jump in with a question for Jeff?
Absolutely.
Jeff, you would, kind of niche laws that serve very specific purposes in communities. You would, benefit from education, and you would imagine if the committee and the mayor are, people who want to do the right thing, right, give them the benefit of the doubt, that if you educate them as to what is going to help the cat population, that they would then tailor laws to be beneficial. Is that something that you feel that they're receptive to?
Yeah, it's Stephen. It's hard to understand what they're receptive to, only because the communication has been so choppy, and while they're residents and their neighbors, they're also politicians, and they oftentimes can speak like politicians, and so when we try to talk to one another, there's sometimes long gaps between responses, and it's the Village of Floral Park uses an outside law firm that I believe works with other incorporated villages within Nassau County and perhaps elsewhere. So there's not an attorney on staff. So every time they go and talk to somebody, there's probably a bill generated. They want to perhaps limit those bills, and also they may not. We've had a lot of conversations with them in the last 4 months, including a long sit-down conversation, and describe to them in depth and also in writing what we believe they should do, and what steps the village leaders need to take in order to prevent perhaps a hoarding situation, which is completely different. Someone could be hoarding, gumballs. It has nothing to do with cats, except for the fact that it's a companion animal, and you can be criminally liable for being cruel to them. And the challenge is, what do you do when you have a cat wandering through and camping out in your backyard that you've never seen before? If you're not a cat person, who do you call? And we've laid those steps out for them in pretty significant detail, both in writing and verbally. And they've had 4 months to figure this out. This is not, we're not trying to pass a bill for Congress here. This is pretty simple stuff to fix. And the Village of Floral Park passed 7 laws the entire year last year, and this was number 7. So it's not like there's other stuff they're doing, but this is not, it's not a heavy lift. And there are other models, as we have conveyed to them, that villages have used, New Hyde Park being one, and that can be replicated in a much more contained, well-governed community that, for the most part, I think Floral Park is. So, somehow, and particularly when you have village leaders, elected leaders that are cat people, that understand what it is to be a cat owner, have fed cats outside before, the steps needed to coordinate with rescue groups. And, it's not that hard. And so I think my first words to them back in December was, if you think parents of kids that go to elementary school and elsewhere are protective and passionate people, wait till you start annoying cat owners and cat advocates. I said, you've not seen anything yet. I said to the mayor, I said, I'm trying to save you being the recipient of 400 plus emails from dissatisfied people. Now there's almost 1,300 signers on this petition, and guys like John DeBacker are calling for significant visibility in the village to overturn and repeal this law. And we're trying to present them with very basic steps that the village can do in conjunction with volunteers that want to assist in this process.
Well, I mean, you talked to them, you gave them all this information. What was their response?
That's a great question. They appear to be good listeners, or at least people that listen. I'm not sure if it's good or not. And we've had pleasant conversations about what our opinions are and what our perspectives are. We gave them a pretty extensive flow chart that residents could follow. That I haven't disseminated that flow chart because they asked for it. We gave it to them. I'm not sure what ultimately going to do with that, but
do they understand that the only way to do TNR is to feed cats?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Stephen, if they truly do. And
because you're not gonna trap cats if you're not getting them to show up at mealtime.
Of course, and that is, as you know, the rescue folks use that as a significant tool in order to trap a cat and get it cared for. And most residents, us being initially a part of that, would feed cats just because we thought it was good for them to have food, without really having a plan as to what to do next. And it's really just the first step, or maybe the second. First is identifying that you have a cat in your area. But simply feeding is not the first and last step in the process. And the rescue people and the group that we've been working with, particularly, who has done rescues in Floral Park. I mean, just to step back for a second, the Cats Under the Stars folks rescued a cat, blind cat that was a house cat in Floral Park for a number of years. One of the folks died in the house. The surviving spouse just let the cat outside. This cat had, number one, couldn't see. Number two, had no idea how to fend for itself, was wandering around the street aimlessly. And our rescue friends came along and picked it up, paid for its eye surgery, and now it's an indoor cat once again being cared for. And but people spotted this cat, and folks are good spotters. They're not really good at they may be good feeders, but they're not good at understanding that food is a component to a rescue. and that needs to be used in a smart way. And that's the education process that, whether the board and the mayor understand, but they haven't really conveyed. I'm not sure. And we said, look, we're willing to educate the community as to how to do this the right way, and put together a task force. I think if the village would allocate a very modest sum of money to do what needs to be done above and beyond taking rescues to the town of Hempstead Animal Shelter. The town of Hempstead Animal Shelter, from the perspective of cats anyway, can be a great resource, because they will do TNR on a first come first served basis. They will lend you a trap as well to facilitate doing this, and you bring the cat back to the shelter. They'll vaccinate it and spay or neuter the cat, and you take it back, and it's up to you to return it back to its locale, or to figure out perhaps how to get the cat adopted. And it's done, I think, either a modest amount or for free. I'm not sure what the economics are, but all the rescue folks know all this stuff, and they understand the nuances of essentially the business, and they know how to trap cats. And it is they are relentlessly pursuing that objective. And there's a neighbor a few blocks away from us that feeds outdoor cats, one of which got injured somehow. We don't know if it was attacked by a dog or some other animal. Had this massive wound on its behind its neck, on its back, and the Cats Under the Stars folks managed to trap this cat after several days, and being prevented from going on this neighbor's property, because she said, you can't come on my property. So you need to ask permission, obviously, and gain permission to access people's properties. But a neighbor said, yes, please set the trap up in my yard. They managed to catch this cat. If you saw the horrific wound, you would say this cat would have to be put down. And the vet at the town of Hempstead Shelter managed to save the cat, stitch the cat back up. It was subsequently brought to a vet, a regular vet on Hillside Avenue, and was further given care, and is now under the care of one of the fosters, and being nursed back to health. And it's really all because someone just feeding cats. They're not really assisting in the sterilization of cats and getting them off the street. And some neighbors will say, yeah, come and set the trap up in my backyard. I'm happy to assist. Others don't want you anywhere near their property. So we've tried to counsel and give guidance to the village board as to what people can do. And so what ultimately resulted was this sort of half-baked solution to feed animals in general that they put out the early part of March, which completely ignored the Law 7 controversy. And so I posted the letter on we have a little page, Floral Park Cat Advocates. We posted that letter that was sent off to the village leaders on Friday, and we hope to get a response with and an audience back with these folks, so we can help craft something that's smart and something that's humane and something that ultimately helps the residents. And there are people that have said, I'm never going to buy a house in your town because you got this crazy law on the books. And we shared that thought with our village leaders. I said, we don't want to have a village that is thought to be anti-companion animal, whether it's cats or dogs or anything else. I said, that doesn't make any sense. Other villages have tried to do this, Babylon, I believe, and Great Neck, and they've gotten, they've had to repeal the effort. I said, why do you want to go down this path? It doesn't make any sense. There are better solutions for us to pursue.
And by the way, by good fortune, Sam runs a rescue. She's itty bitty city kitty. So everything you discussed about rescues, she's very well aware of. So I saw you nodding a lot, Sam.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and say, so I'm the director and operator of not one, but two nonprofits dedicated to animal welfare. And one of our 3 points of our mission is TNR. And I think at this point we've TNR'd probably 5,000 cats, maybe more. I'm in Rockaway, and we have a significant homeless cat problem. And similar to the Floral Park case is Breezy Point, which is at the other end of the
Yep.
peninsula, and it's
Yes.
incorporated into New York City, and they don't want us feeding or trapping cats. They just want the cats eliminated. And it's interesting because Floral Park has kind of been on the radar for those of us that do TNRM because of the cat thing. And it's an interesting advocacy, and I'm not sure how much of all of this has been discussed with your town and your village, is that Floral Park is considered a border community. So there's some Queens and some Nassau, right?
And also
And
some
so
town of
New York,
Hempstead's town of North Hempstead. So it's
right.
really in 4
So
different jurisdictions.
right. So I think part of the problem that all of us think that you're up against, first of all, is the model that in New York State, animal hoarding is actually not illegal.
Right.
And it's actually not considered abusive. Animals in New York State are deemed property, and they're the same property value as like this cup, a cat, a cup, same thing. So how people care for their animals in their home is considered public or private property. So, you may go into someone's house and the house is trashed and they're living in filth, but unfortunately with children, but unfortunately it isn't considered child abuse unless it's happening open to the public. And New York State animal abuse laws are very, very niche. And the ongoing abuse has to be visible to responding police officers. And that abuse is usually defined as physical violence. So animals that are without food and water, without litter, and living on top of each other is technically not considered abuse, which is why they can't prosecute hoarders. And it's unfortunate, actually, because I've done quite a few hoarding cases where animals have just been in really bad shape. But unless the owner of the animals surrenders the animals to animal care and control or TOHAS or one of the other big shelters to step in and take possession, nothing can be done by the state of New York. So that's going to be a problem. The other problem, of course, is that companion animals are regulated. They're not regulated in New York City. You can have as many animals as you want, but dogs have to be licensed, and technically cats have to be spay neutered. And there's a law that says if they're not and you're caught, you pay a violation, but the Department of Health doesn't enforce any of that. It's the same for unowned outdoor cats. And under the state of New York, unowned outdoor cats are considered wild, not domestic animals, which is how they maintain their outdoor status. So instead of them being like rounded up, like Los Angeles County in California decided like 25 years ago to deal with their feral problem by rounding up and doing mass euthanasia. And that, of course, didn't fix it because you can't get rid of all the cats. The cats are still going to replicate. One female cat is technically responsible, can be responsible for as many as 1 million other cats. Female cats become fertile at approximately 4 months old and can start reproducing by the time they're 6 months old. They can have 6 litters a year. Litters can have as many as 8 kittens per litter, and they can reproduce till they're 15. So it's very easy for somebody to take in 3 homeless cats and end up with 60 homeless cats in a year and a half. So that's part of it. We are constantly advocating with the city of New York and the state of New York to try to expand on the companion animals care and quality of life acts, as well as sort of the feral outdoor community cats and what the definition of a feral cat is. I think, at least for me, right, I don't actually advocate ever for bringing a feral cat in and trying to socialize it and give it a home. That's kind of like bringing a tiger into a cage and saying you need to stay in this cage and we're going to pet you long enough until you break your spirit. So putting them back outside. But I think it's crazy to me that you guys have this little town that's willing to put the effort into TNR and to managing your colonies, right? Because not having a colony is obviously not the case. And actually the definition of a colony is 3 or more cats together outside. So you have this advocate, right? You have these advocates yourself, as well as a group of other people that are saying, we will learn, you'll learn to get, TOHAS can certify you guys for TNR, because technically, legally, you need to be certified in order to participate in those services. And then you're willing to learn how to trap the animals, take them to the shelter facilities, get the vet care, because TNR is neuter, vaccines, and then release with an ear tip. And you guys are willing to do all of that. So the fact that your community board in your town don't see that the fastest way to take that outdoor cat population and reduce it and then eventually end it is massive TNR is crazy to me. In fact, in Los Angeles, so Trap to Kill did not work. So they did a massive TNR protocol, and it took them about 8 years, but they trained huge amounts of volunteers, and clinics stepped up to do free TNR, and they did massive trapping in Los Angeles County. So while there are tons and tons of wild cats, something like 98% of all feral cats are spayed and neutered, and it took the population from something like 500,000 cats down to less than 100,000 cats in 5 years. And they're managed. They're colonies that are fed and cared for. They're microchipped. They're tracked. They're ear tipped. They're not spreading disease. They're not making more kittens. They're not contributing to the overpopulation crisis. And as everybody that's a cat person knows, especially cat people in cities and towns, cats help us do things like reduce rodent populations. So that's, why bodegas love their cats, even though bodegas tend to abuse their cats. But they use them as mousers, and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with having a thriving outdoor community of cats as long as they're cared for. And your town seems to be wanting to do all of the right things. And it's remarkable to me that you're not getting supported, because I guarantee you, like, there are other places that support it. But if it makes you feel any better, there was a meeting with the city council, the New York City Council, in September. And something like 1,000 rescuers went, and we testified before the city of New York and said, we need access to spay neuter. There is no, it's just the ASPCA, and the rest of it's done out of our pockets. And even though we all run organizations, 90% of the stuff I get to pay for myself. And there's no donations, there's no certificate program, there's no city funded care. ACC, the municipal shelter system, doesn't even have their own hospital to spay or neuter their animals either. So all of the community cat care is being placed onto the individual rescuers. And because of that, these animals are wandering the street. The last sort of head count that Flatbush Cats did was about 1 million homeless cats in New York City alone. And those animals, we can control that population. They don't want to be your house pet. They don't want to live in your house. They don't want to live in your backyard. They want to be wild, but we can control that by spaying and neutering them and closing down the crisis. But New York City had this wonderful meeting and said, yes, we understand. Not one thing has been done. Not one. Not a bill has been passed. Nothing. And if anything, the capacity for free spay neuter for rescuers has been reduced by the ACC program and the ASPC program by like 70% since the pandemic. And they've not put it back up. So
It just
it's
seems
not
like
just you.
it seems like such a manageable situation for if Los Angeles could do it, Floral Park could do it in a fraction of the time.
Exactly.
Certainly if we have Jeff, you've already written up a plan where you have rescues. If John DeBacker is involved, these cats will be trapped that day. I asked him to go to a situation in Islip where 6 cats needed to be rescued from a friend of mine's cousin who passed away. He had them trapped literally in under an hour or 90 minutes. If John DeBacker is involved, these cats will be trapped in no time. He has this magic ability to just get it done. Also with nets and with whatever's necessary. He's got his van and he just does it. It just like you both were saying, it boggles the mind. These 1,300 signatures, are they Floral Park resident signatures?
Not all,
on this?
not all of them, and every community. I can appreciate Sam's perspective. Every community is different. We're certainly not Queens or Los Angeles, and truthfully, I respectfully disagree with the fact that ferals can't be domesticated, because I can show you a whole bunch in my house that have and are happily so, and clearly you're not going to domesticate 1 million outside homeless cats in New York City. So the lack of response seems to be common from a legislator's perspective, and because it's I kid around about this. Cat advocates tend to be viewed as a little kooky and eccentric. And
No.
you got people that are willing to climb trees to get a cat down, and it's it's just, it doesn't make you kooky, crazy, or political, and the political. If you had to take a survey of cat advocates, most of them are probably left of center politically, but we've been doing this for a few years. No one talks about politics, yet it ultimately comes down to political decisions that can help everybody involved, including the cats, in this process. And
Yeah.
I don't care what your politics are. If you're gonna be anti-cat, I'm gonna be anti-you,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna come
Absolutely.
after you with every means that I can bring forward. And you know, we were theorizing after a meeting that I got to one of the meetings at the town of North Hempstead when they were
Uh-oh.
talking about a cat shelter and their ongoing effort to try to make that happen to no avail. And I said, you know, maybe it makes sense to try to form a non-for-profit just to be an advocate group. And you can't obviously be political as a non-for-profit, but there are ways that you
Sure you
can
can.
support
I
efforts
am.
to do that. So I said, you know, once we get this resolved, that'll be something we give some consideration to. And, you know, having an outside board of professionals, as many non-for-profits do. And I've sat on non-for-profit boards for 25 or 30 years and as a board member. And so I have some perspective as to what that is like. And then having a group of cat rescue professionals as advisors, and then, you know, figure out how to fund that, you know, at some point. But just to be influential, because elected officials care about a couple of things: maintaining their seat and power and influence. And if that is, and I'm not suggesting anybody's threatened in that regard, but if the Floral Park Village mayor and two trustees were recently elected unopposed, they each got about 260 votes. So the number of signers of my petition more than exceeded the aggregate number of votes that those three recently received. So I'm not running for office. I don't plan to run for
Should.
office. I'm not encouraging anybody to run for office.
Maybe you
However,
should.
I it's not a job that I want, but all I want is for people to understand that there's a wide group of people that want this law changed. And I don't really care what has to be done, obviously within the legal boundaries, but that we all have to do to make this happen. And if it becomes political pressure, then so be it. I mean, these folks are not, you know, running for higher office, odds are, but they may want to do that at some point. And
So,
North Hempstead just, you know, it's got a two-party system on their board, but it's a similar issue. So you can't just talk about this. And dogs are. I've said this to our village leaders. If there's a dog wandering around the neighborhood, there will be 40 people trying to corral this dog, get it into their car, bring it to we have a local police station in our village, and it'll get posted on Facebook within the hour until it's
Yeah.
reunited with its family. Cats, not so much. They're viewed more as pests by many people who are not cat supporters, similar to raccoons or possums,
Yeah.
and you know that. And I've seen it because I'll post an update on one of the Floral Park Village Facebook pages, and, you know, get snarky comments and, you know, people that clearly are not cat supporters, and yeah, just ignore that sort of stuff. And but I say to people all the time, you harm a cat and expect to get a visit from the local constable. And I say you're going to get if that's seen on tape and you're caught doing that, that could result in some problems legally for you. And not to threaten people, but just to make sure people understand what the laws are. So these are not pests; they're companion animals by definition of law, and we're not easing up until we get this changed. And I think the village may have thought it was just the three of us, but as I said, you know, the benefit of being a donor to many is that when you send up a flare for help, they all come running, and eagerly so, because, you know, we're helping with their cause too. And you know, my wife and I have capacity and a lot of time, and, you know, we're not gonna ease up. My wife spent many years in the media business, and so she knows that industry very well, and she knows how to get a hold of the right people if that comes down to it. And it, you know, we're not trying to convey threats to anybody. We just want this law change, and we're willing to we have been willing to cooperate and provide them with a framework that we think makes sense, using professionals that know more than we do to help us construct that. And so,
So where does this stand now? We have this petition, and you said that they recently passed guidelines about feeding cats
no,
in March.
they haven't. Each trustee has a certain area that they're responsible for, and they post a report on that area, whether it's Department of Public Works. In this case, this particular trustee was essentially took the lead on this cat law issue, and she posted, really, it was essentially a joke because it just talked about guidelines for feeding animals, much of which I had already posted, which was, if you're going to feed a cat outside, do it during daylight hours or monitor the situation. Don't leave food out after the cats are finished eating, and pick up the materials, food and water, whatever you're feeding them, after the cats are done, so it doesn't result in raccoons and possums and bugs coming around, particularly in the summertime. So, and she kind of reiterated that, but there was no focus on the repeal or amendment of Law 7. And look, if I'm a neighbor to someone who's a hoarder, and it's resulting in a problem situation that permeates other neighbors, I can empathize with that. I get that. I don't want that to happen to my yard. I don't want somebody dropping a can of random cat food off on my front yard and walking away because they think they see a cat walking around. It's there's suburbs being what they are. Everybody's protective of their square footage and their property lines, and so we've relayed all that to them and communicated that to our community, and I think everybody gets that, and it's the lack of progress to a resolution after 4 months is what I frankly I just lost patience for and with, and then when there was a report that was provided that was essentially an update to the community by the board that basically didn't address the issue at hand, I said, okay, that's enough. We're going to petition, and going to DEFCON 2 here, and we're going to take this to a higher level, and ultimately figure out how to get some more attention drawn to it from not only the community but the cat advocate supporters beyond. So that's kind of where we stand at this point, and hopefully we'll get a response from our elected leaders in town, and we can have some meaningful conversation about how to get this fixed. And get the cats cared for.
They're welcome on this show if they want to discuss this with you in a public forum. I'm sure my team would definitely have no problems with that. We can have up to 10 people with this software, so they're welcome to join us anytime, and we'd be happy to, as my father would say, educate them on the right way and the wrong way. Mm-hmm. Stephen, I know you had, do you agree with, in terms of feeding, both of you, actually Sam and Stephen, that's what Jeff pointed out about feeding cats and making sure you kind of clean up after. Do you both agree with that in terms of guidelines or suggestions?
I can't hear Stephen.
Stephen, we don't hear you.
I'm sorry, I had muted my mic. Yeah, I mean, I think Sam can speak to it more than I can because of her experience, but I want to quickly recommend a book for Jeff that talks about the legal status and the social status of dogs and cats in this country through history. It's called Citizen Canine by a great guy named David Grimm, who's a friend of mine, by the way, Grimm. And there was a case in the 1800s where this one guy accused this other guy of stealing his cat. Neighbors. And they went to a court, and the court said, no, he can't steal your cat. You can't possibly own a cat. Because at that time, cats were not considered property. And then they started moving through different, areas of where they become property and how that has all evolved. So it's a great, great book. But
that's a great book.
Thank you.
And it'll be on the show in the near future.
Yeah.
It's here. What mystifies me with your particular problem, Jeff, and it mystifies me in general with advocacy for welfare. One, I could not agree with you more about dogs versus cats. And as a feline specific rescuer, who has worked with dogs and works with, partners, I'm a partner with the city shelter facilities here too. And Tollhouse, I love them. They're great. Um, Dogs do get all of this sort of like, oh my God, the dog got out, until people think they're pit bulls and fighting dogs. And specifically, of course, right now in Rockaway and in parts of the city, we're having a huge issue with dog fighting and cats being used as baits and puppy baiting and all this other stuff. And our city, of our elected officials, I mean, Mayor Adams sucks anyways, but it's gone all the way up to the top of the state, and we have tried to advocate to deal with dog fighting, and it's the police precincts that don't want to get involved because they don't know how to deal with animal welfare issues, which might be some of the issue that you might run into out there, is dealing with getting police involved with different, because they don't have a lot of animal training, so it's very hard to get them involved. But one of the things that we really encourage people out here who are feeding community cats, and I do most of the sort of the community cat advocacy for the Rockaways in the Rockaway area, is definitely feed them on a schedule if you can. It depends, of course, on the place. Like we have what we call wanderers, as I'm sure you know, like you say, like a cat shows up once in a while and it's not always for feeding time, but then you see them and you put food out. So in those situations, we try to encourage our feeders to put food in places where the cats can get to it, but the humans cannot get to the cats, behind fencing, etc. And we always tell people, no cans, no paper plates. Food goes directly on the ground so that when it's gone, there is no trash, there's no litter. We live a half a block from the ocean. The last thing we need is more litter on the beach. And sheltering is very difficult too, of course, because out here people see community cat shelters and they see feeding stations, and the gentlemen that run the dog rings wait. And they wait for cats to show up to these shelters and these community feeding stations, and that's how they grab them for the fights. And so it is case by case specific. But it's amazing to me that your town has had so much advocacy and so many of you have stepped up to say, we're going to work on this problem. We want to establish a feeding schedule. We want to know who all these cats are. We're willing to microchip them. We want to get them at least spayed and neutered so that we're limiting the population, and the animals that can be rehomed, we can rehome them. And the fact that you have a volunteer army, it sounds like, of people that are willing to do this in your town still won't do anything, goes a long way to show you how very little we actually care about our companion animals as a human group, even though we like to pretend we do. Because I tell people all the time, they care about their animals here, and then as soon as they see animals outside, they might be like, oh, but they don't necessarily feel as motivated to help them. It takes a special group, but you seem to have a good group, so it's very disheartening to me that you guys have done what you've done and you've not gotten any traction.
I think it's a good-hearted group, but as you know, the rescue business is very fragmented. People are coming and going as residents and individuals, and I think it makes it difficult to consolidate a uniform plan that works and keep it consistent. Oftentimes folks, they'll see a cat that's wandering or coming to their back patio, and they'll post a picture of it, and
Who lost his cat?
I've seen that. I've seen those a lot.
Yeah, you see them all the time, and no one knows what to do next. And what's the plan? Is it someone's neighbor's cat? And that's why we said, let's get everybody chipped. Everybody can identify their cat if it gets out. So if it's not chipped, it's a rescue candidate, honestly. And if you have a cat like Dan's, you're probably going to easily get it adopted. And if it's not, we want to come up with perhaps if it's going to get returned, that's fine. But if we can get a cat off the streets of the village, not because they're pests, but we want them to live a better life, and whatever that better life is, that's ultimately what I'm trying to get the village to support, and the village leaders to support, and I don't think that they've underestimated the support, but they're certainly not going to take it for granted going forward, and that's that's really my goal, is to make sure that we care for the cats in the best way possible, whatever that best way happens to be. And as you know,
Yeah.
Sam, there's a lot of different perspectives as to what that best is. And it may differ from region to region. It may be different in different parts of Floral Park itself. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
ultimately, that's our objective. And we have no patience for anybody that's not anything but 1,000% kind to animals of all kinds and
Neither
all
do we.
kinds.
Yeah.
And we're not letting this go, and we're going to keep
You
after
should.
it.
Well, and
And
you've got 1,300 email addresses that you can
yes, sir.
mobilize, into whether it's into a volunteer group.
Yes.
So yeah.
And people with
Yeah.
with influence and means to be more impactful. And sometimes advocacy takes some resources to execute. And Floral Park's not a big place. It's not a village rolling in a lot of excess dollars. And it's largely a volunteer group that is running the village. Everybody's either retired or they have another job that are governing our village. So they're not full-time politicians, is my point. And they live among us and they want to do the right thing. And our goal is to lead them to that end goal that is what we believe the right thing to do. And I think we have the support both within and outside Floral Park and within the region to do that. And people like Sam and Stephen, as well as Dan, who live nearby, not necessarily in the tax jurisdiction of Floral Park, or we consider our advocates as well.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're trying to do, is marshal all those folks and get the attention of these elected leaders in our village to make something happen finally, and in the right kind of way. So
This is Tucker,
I would
by the
like
way.
to applaud you. Oh, I would like to just applaud you, Jeff, for coming up with that plan, by the way, for what to do when you see a cat, because so many people have no idea. And a lot of rescuers get frustrated because that's like the thing that we are constantly trying to educate people. It's like, what do you do when you see a kitten? This is like half of my, because I do neonatal kittens.
yeah.
So that's my perspective, right? And TNR, right? So what you're doing, trying to just even educate people and bring in rescues and have the rescue
Absolutely.
resources on board is so huge, is a first step. And your city council and the village council should be, I mean, that is a huge step forward, just even to understand what a crisis looks like and how to come up with a plan going forward.
Right.
I mean, that really is wonderful. And so I applaud you for that, because a lot of people don't think that that's a good first step. And that is the first step to fixing a feral cat issue.
Right.
Or anything with wild animals, but especially with cats, understanding what they need, how to get them care, and where to go to get that care. That's such a huge thing, and very, very good that you're doing that.
Well, it's one of the tools that we offered to provide the village with, and again, we gave it to them a few weeks ago. We're not sure what they're going to do with it. Again, if they were, if there was active and regular dialogue with us, someone's calling me, politicians and politics aside, okay, what do you want to do with this? Our collective team may have the answer, even if I may not. But in fact, I think my wife made the suggestion we should have a flow chart. I said, and then one of the trustees said, "Oh, okay, can you do that?" And I said to Cindy, the first thing that you often don't do in volunteer situations is offer an idea, because you're going to wind up doing it. She did a
Yes.
great flow chart. She put a beautiful chart together with our collective input and presented it to them. And then, we got some feedback from them, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks later. And so we made some modifications, sent it on back, and ultimately, that's gone into the proverbial black hole at this point. And, maybe there's a grander plan, but there's not a lot of conversation with us as to what to do. And, I'm not elected, but I view myself in a comparable position to them, because I pay the same amount of real estate taxes as they do. So, it's like a condo. You each own your portion, and you each have a vote and influence in the process. And we happen to have, a pretty dedicated bunch of people that want to have this law repealed. So, leading them to the to the promised land, so to speak, is what our job is at this point. And you know, I don't chase them down every day or maybe even every week, but after the early March board report that was vague and superficial, you know, that motivated us to march ahead. So.
Jeff, can you share your flow chart with Dan? Is that
Yeah.
something you could do?
Yeah,
with us?
without a doubt. Sure, absolutely. I'd be happy to. It's not.
And
It's not
I'll put the link to the petition, you know, in
Yes.
when we edit the episode. So we'll have that petition for people to sign. I've signed it. I've shared it. I've shared it even on the
Right.
Facebook page for the podcast. Jeff, I live in Floral Park, so we're neighbors. I feed cats that show up. I'm down to about 2. I used to have about 6 that showed up. I TNR'd them years ago. So the fact that we as a town have you leading this charge and organizing it the way you have, I consider myself a fortunate resident that we have you as an advocate for this law, and you didn't just, you know, close your door and go on with your life, that you're leading this charge. So like Sam and Stephen, we definitely applaud you for your efforts.
My
You know,
pleasure. Thank you.
the town trustees, they are welcome on this show anytime. So feel free to
love that idea.
feel free to mention it that you did this recording. We could share it with them when it's out. They are welcome to join you on this show, and we'd be happy to discuss this as a group. Anything we could do to help as a podcast, we'd be happy to do it to the extent of our abilities. But mostly, Jeff, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for just everything you've done. I'm very happy to be a neighbor of yours, quote unquote, and I really hope that eventually they get their heads out of the sand and just see that there's a better way to handle this than to just have a knee-jerk reaction, which is what my first reaction was. This is a knee-jerk reaction to one situation. So Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks.
We could talk to you all day, but thank you so much. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Tucker.
Thanks,
Tucker was a little shelter cat, so he's a shelter cat. I don't know if you heard him purring.
Oh, we did.
And there's your kitten. There's your kitten.
This is Wally. He's my current foster right now.
Oh.
He's a single kitten, so he's like a little single kitten syndrome right now. So we're working on letting him get beaten up by the house cats.
And this has been episode 59, and we'll be back for our 60th episode.
Yeah.
But until then, adopt, don't shop, and thank you so much. Thank you, Jeff, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks.
Bye
folks.
for now.
Take care. Bye-bye now.